My name is Lena Carter. I'm 32 years old. The day my father decided to celebrate kicking me out of his house, he treated it like a neighborhood event. I pulled into the driveway to grab the last box from the garage, and the first thing I saw was a banner stretched across the door. Big red letters. White background. Tied to the gutters with rope. Goodbye, freeloader. Don't come back. The grill was going. Country music was playing from a speaker on the patio. People were standing around with paper plates like it was the 4th of July. Someone laughed when my car rolled in. From the yard, a voice shouted, "Look who finally decided to leave the nest." Another voice said, "About time. 32 and still living at home." Something hit the side of my car. I looked down and saw a hot dog on the driveway, bun split open. "Last free meal," somebody called out. I stood there for a second with my keys in my hand, holding them tighter than I needed to. What bothered me most wasn't the banner. It was that nobody there thought they were being cruel. They believed the story. I didn't argue. I didn't say anything. I walked into the house, picked up the last box from the laundry room, came back outside, and before I put it in the trunk, I took one photo of the banner with everyone standing under it smiling. My father saw me take the picture and shook his head like I was finally accepting reality. I drove away without saying a word. 2 weeks later, my phone started lighting up with messages I never expected to get from him. "Call me. We need to talk. Please pick up." Before I explain why he was begging, I have to go back a few years to when I first moved back into his house. Because the version my family told everyone was simple. Too simple. According to them, I was 32, divorced before I ever married, working from my laptop, living off my father, and drifting through life while everyone else carried me. That story worked well at barbecues. It worked at church. It worked online where people like to say things like, "Sometimes tough love is the only way." The truth was quieter, and a lot less useful to them. I moved back to my father's place in Mesa, Arizona, 3 years earlier. Not because I couldn't afford to live on my own, because his sign company was starting to fall apart. Carter Signs and Install had been around since before I was in high school. Storefront lettering, trade show banners, vehicle wraps, small business jobs that kept the shop busy most of the year. Then material prices went up. 2 big customers stopped paying on time. 1 city permit got held up for months. From the outside, the business still looked fine. Inside, it was running week to week. My father handled problems the way he always had. He talked louder, blamed suppliers, blamed workers, blamed the economy. Eventually, he blamed me. The part nobody mentioned was that I was the one keeping things from getting worse. I didn't have the kind of job my family respected. They liked jobs with uniforms, trucks, or tools you could see. I worked remotely as a contract coordinator. Most of my work was paperwork nobody else wanted to deal with. Vendor forms, bid packages, deadlines, compliance checklists. It paid well because most companies hated doing it. I was good at it because I noticed details. When I first moved back, I told myself it was temporary, just until the company stabilized. The first month, I helped sort invoices that hadn't been filed right. The second month, I fixed a permit renewal he forgot about. A week later, I realized sales tax hadn't been submitted correctly for 2 quarters. Then I found equipment leases renewing automatically at double the original rate. Every time I fixed one problem, 2 more showed up behind it. My father never introduced me as the person helping him keep the business running. He introduced me as "My daughter's figuring things out right now." At dinner, he joked about my little computer job. An hour later, he'd ask if I could rewrite an email to a client because it sounded too angry. When payroll was short one Friday, I covered the gap. He called it a loan. Later he laughed and said, "Family doesn't keep score." That sentence stuck with me, because in my family, nobody said that unless they were the one benefiting from nobody counting. I didn't pay for everything at once. I paid the difference. The late fee. The small amount that kept the lights on 1 more week. Software subscriptions. Insurance renewals. Rush orders for materials he forgot to buy. Just enough that the business never collapsed loud enough for anyone outside to hear it. My father hated that I worked from home. To him, if he couldn't see you sweating, you weren't working. He walked through the kitchen while I was on a call and say, "Must be nice." Then later he'd ask if I could fix a contract before morning. The rest of the family followed his lead. My younger sister learned early that making jokes about me got laughs. My uncle hung around the shop doing half work and full-time complaining. My grandmother wrapped every insult in concern. Nobody planned it. In families like mine, everyone just knows their role. Things changed when my father started talking about selling the house. He said he wanted to downsize. Said he was tired of carrying everyone. One night, I overheard him in the backyard telling the neighbor he might give me 90 days to get out. Maybe hitting bottom will make her grow up, he said. They laughed. That was the moment something in me stopped feeling hurt and started feeling clear. I didn't argue with him. I opened my laptop and I started making a spreadsheet. I didn't start the spreadsheet because I was angry. I started it because I knew how things worked in my family. Arguments didn't matter. Memories changed depending on who was telling the story. The louder person usually won. Numbers don't get louder. They just sit there. I opened a blank file and went back through my bank statements 1 month at a time. Not to prove anything yet, just to see it clearly myself. The first entries were small. Software renewals for the shop. A utility payment that bounced when his card declined. A deposit for vinyl materials he forgot to order. Then I kept going. Fuel card transfers. Insurance reinstatement fees. Permit payments to the city website because he missed the deadline again. Every time I saw something I had covered, I added a line. Date. Amount. What it was for. After a while I realized the file needed categories. Company expenses. Household bills. Money sent to my sister. Cash I gave my uncle when he said he'd pay it back after the next job. I didn't rush. I worked on it at night after everyone went to bed, sitting at the kitchen table with the light over the stove on because it was the only one that didn't flicker. Outside, the desert air made that dry rattling sound against the screen door. Inside, the house was quiet in the way it only gets when nobody's talking to you. Some entries I almost left out, not because they weren't real, because they didn't look like payments. Hours rewriting proposals so clients wouldn't cancel. Fixing invoices before they went out. Calling suppliers to keep accounts from getting locked. There isn't a receipt for time. I added notes anyway. By the end of the first week, the spreadsheet went back almost 2 years. By the end of the second week, it was closer to 3. When I totaled everything, I leaned back in the chair and just looked at the number for a long time. It wasn't just a lot. It was more than the house was worth when my parents bought it. I didn't print it. Not yet. I saved the file, closed the laptop, and went to bed like I always did. The next morning, my father walked through the kitchen while I was on a call with a contractor in Colorado. He opened the fridge, looked at me sitting at the table, and said, "Must be nice not having to leave the house for work." I muted the call. "I'm working," I said. He shrugged. "Emails aren't work." Then he left the room. I finished the call, closed my laptop, and sat there for a minute with my hands on the table. That was the moment I stopped telling myself things would even out. Not because of what he said, because of how normal it sounded. Later that week, I got an email from one of my regular clients asking if I'd be interested in a longer contract. They were based in Colorado Springs and needed someone to manage proposals and compliance full-time for a few months. Good pay. Remote. Possibility to extend. I read the email twice before answering. Yes. That night, instead of updating the spreadsheet, I opened a map. Colorado was far enough that nobody could drop by without planning it. Far enough that the story about me could stay in Arizona if it wanted to. I found a 1-bedroom apartment online. Nothing fancy. 2nd floor. Older building. Parking lot view. I put down the deposit the next morning. I didn't tell anyone. Not my father. Not my sister. Not even my aunt, who usually knew everything before it happened. I rented a small storage unit on the edge of town and started moving things a little at a time. Winter clothes first. Books next. The monitor I bought myself that my father thought belonged to the house. Nobody noticed. People don't notice slow changes. They only notice when something disappears all at once. About a week later, my father cornered me in the kitchen while I was making coffee. He leaned against the counter like he had rehearsed what he was about to say. I've been thinking, he said. I waited. I think it's time you get your own place. He said it calmly, like he expected me to agree. I figured that might be coming, I said. He nodded, satisfied. You're 32. No reason to still be here. I understand. He watched me for a second, like he was waiting for an argument. When I didn't give him one, he kept talking. I'm doing this for you, he said. You need a push. I poured the coffee and set the mug on the table. When do you want me out? I asked. He smiled a little. End of the month. That gave me 3 weeks. I already had an apartment. Already had the contract. Already had most of my things in storage. He didn't know any of that. He thought he was the one making the decision. I nodded. Okay, I said. He looked almost disappointed. No fight? He asked. No, he shook his head like he couldn't believe how easy it was. Good, he said. That means you're finally growing up. That night I opened the spreadsheet again. Not to add anything. To finish it. I went back through the last few months and filled in the things I hadn't written down yet. The insurance payment for the shop van. The overdue electric bill on the workshop account. The rush order I put on my card so he wouldn't lose a job. At the bottom, I added one more line. Unpaid administrative work, estimate. I stared at the number for a long time before typing it. Then I saved the file, closed the laptop, and started packing the last box in the laundry room. Once the spreadsheet was finished, I stopped trying to convince anyone of anything. That was the shift. Before that, I kept thinking if I explained things the right way, my father would understand how much I had been doing for the business. After that night, I realized explanation wasn't the problem. The story he believed didn't need facts. It just needed to feel right to him. So instead of talking, I started organizing. I made a folder on my laptop and labeled it records. Inside, I saved the spreadsheet, then started adding proof for each line. Bank statements, payment confirmations, emails from suppliers, screenshots of text messages asking if I could handle one thing. Not because I planned to use them, because I wanted the truth written down somewhere that couldn't be interrupted. I went back through my email history almost 3 years. Every time my father forwarded a message he didn't understand, it went into the folder. Every time my uncle asked for money to keep a job moving, I saved it. Every time my sister said she'd pay me back later, I saved that too. It took longer than I expected. Not because there were too many files. Because I kept remembering things I hadn't thought about in months. The permit renewal I fixed at midnight. The insurance lapse I caught the day before the deadline. The time I rewrote an entire proposal because he had sent it with half the pages missing. None of those things looked important on their own. Together, they told a very different story than the one on the banner. When I finished, the folder had more than 30 documents in it. I printed everything at a copy shop near the interstate. Black and white. Nothing fancy. 31 pages total. I put them in a plain envelope and left it in the glove box of my car. Not for revenge. For clarity. Around the same time, I started disconnecting things. Slowly. Carefully. Not in a way anyone would notice right away. The project software for the shop had my card listed as a backup payment from the last time his account overdraft. I removed it. The vendor portal where I had been placing rush orders under my login. I logged out and changed the password. The utility account for the workshop still had my email listed for notifications. I took it off. I didn't cancel anything. I didn't call anyone. I just stopped being the person who fixed problems before they reached him. It felt strange at first. Like leaving the door unlocked in a house you've always protected. But the truth was, it wasn't my house. It never had been. The last week before I moved, I finished taking my things to the storage unit. 1 box at a time. Books. Kitchen stuff I bought myself. The desk chair from my old apartment. By Thursday, the only thing left in the house was 1 banker's box in the laundry room. I left it there on purpose. If I took everything at once, he would ask questions. If I left one thing, he assumed I still needed the house. Friday night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open one last time. I checked the spreadsheet again. Not to change anything. Just to make sure I could look at it without feeling angry. The numbers still surprised me. Not because of the money. Because of how normal it had felt while I was paying it. I closed the laptop and went to bed early. The next morning, my father was already outside when I woke up. I could hear music through the window. Country station, loud enough that the bass rattled the glass. When I walked into the kitchen, my sister was there with a plate of chips. "You going somewhere?" she asked. "Just finishing packing," I said. She nodded like she didn't care. "Dad's got people coming over," she said. "Something about the house." I didn't ask. I poured coffee, drank half of it, and went to the laundry room. The last box was still there, just where I left it. On top of it was a piece of paper with black marker writing. Starter kit. Inside the box were dryer sheets, instant noodles, trash bags, and a printed list of cheap apartments in town. For a second, I just stood there looking at it. Not hurt, not surprised, just tired. I picked the box up, carried it through the house, and opened the front door. That's when I saw the banner. And the grill. And the neighbors standing in the driveway like they were waiting for something to start. My father turned when he heard the door. He was wearing an apron that said Grill Master across the front. Well, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look who finally decided to move out." People laughed. Someone clapped. My uncle raised a beer like it was a toast. I walked past them without saying anything, put the box in the trunk, and went back to the driver's seat. Before I closed the door, I took out my phone. I held it up and took one picture of the banner with everyone standing under it. My father squinted at me. "What's that for?" he said. I looked at the screen for a second, then locked the phone. "For later," I said. Then I got in the car, started the engine, and drove away. For 3 days, nobody called. That told me everything. They thought the problem was gone. They thought the story was finished. They didn't realize the only reason the business had been quiet was because I was the one keeping it that way. The first call came on Monday afternoon. I was sitting at the small desk in my new apartment in Colorado Springs, going through a vendor packet for a contractor who never sent the same form twice. My phone buzzed once on the table. "Dad." I let it ring. Not to make a point. Because I already knew what the call was about. When you've been the person holding things together for long enough, you can tell exactly how long it takes before something starts to slip. I finished the page I was working on, saved the file, and then checked the voicemail. His voice sounded careful. "Hey, when you get this, call me. There's some mix-up with the shop software. I think your card might still be on there or something." Mix-up. That was the word he used when something went wrong that he didn't understand. I didn't call back. I opened my notebook instead. When things start getting messy, I write things down. Not feelings. Steps. Step 1, do not respond right away. Step 2, let the situation show itself. Step 3, only speak when the facts are clear. I closed the notebook and went back to work. Tuesday morning, there were 3 missed calls. 1 from my father. 2 from my uncle. No messages from my sister yet. That told me the problem was still in the business, not the house. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. "Dad says the system is locked. Can you log in and fix it?" I read it once, then set the phone face down. Silence isn't always avoiding something. Sometimes it's the only way to see what happens without you. By Wednesday, the tone changed. The voicemail came early, before 8. "Ava, Lena, call me when you can. Power company left a notice on the workshop account. I think the autopay got messed up." His voice had that polite edge he used with clients. Not angry yet. Not worried enough to apologize. Just confused. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and listened to the message again while the steam from the mug fogged the window. Then I wrote another line in the notebook. Step 4, do not fix problems you didn't create. I went to work. That afternoon, my uncle called twice. No voicemail the first time. The second time, he left one. "Hey, I know the party got a little out of hand. You know how your dad is. Listen, the van payment's late and the install Friday's a big one. If you could just send something to cover it, we'll square up later. We'll square up later." I almost smiled when I heard that. That sentence had been used so many times it barely sounded like language anymore. I didn't call him back. Thursday evening, my sister finally texted. "Are you seriously ignoring everyone?" I waited a few minutes before answering. I wasn't deciding what to say. I was deciding how much to say. Not everything needs to be explained. Just enough to keep things clear. I typed one line. I'm working. What's wrong? Her reply came fast. Dad's freaking out. Something with insurance, power, and the project system. He says you shut stuff off. I read that twice. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder. Records. Not to send it. Not yet. Just to remind myself what the truth looked like when it was written down. 3 years of payments. 3 years of fixes. 3 years of things nobody noticed because they never had to. I closed the folder, picked up the phone again, and typed one more message. I didn't shut anything off. I just stopped paying for it. There was a long pause before she answered. What does that mean? I looked at the screen for a moment, then took a screenshot of one page from the spreadsheet. Not the whole file, just a section. Workshop utilities. Software subscriptions. Insurance payments. Dates. Amounts. My name on every line. I sent the image. Nothing else. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then my phone rang again. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. The message came through a few seconds later. His voice sounded different this time. Less sure. Call me back, please. We need to talk about what exactly you've been paying and what you took off the accounts. Not what happened. Not how are you. What did you take off? I wrote another line in the notebook. Step 5, only talk in person. That night, I opened the envelope from the glove box and spread the pages across the table. 31 sheets. Timeline. Totals. Screenshots. Notes. At the very bottom, the photo from the driveway. The banner over the garage. Everyone smiling. I stacked the pages back together, put them in a clean folder, and set it by the door. Then I picked up my phone and sent one message. Tomorrow. Noon. Public place. He replied almost immediately. Come to the house. I stared at the screen for a second. Then I typed back. No. You wanted an audience when I left. You can have one when you ask why. I locked the phone, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed. For the first time in a long time, I slept without feeling like something in the house needed me to stay awake. We met at a diner just off the highway the next day. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths, coffee that never quite tastes fresh, and a row of trucks parked along the side like they've been there for years. I got there early on purpose. Not to make a point. I just didn't want to walk in and see him already watching the door. I ordered coffee and sat in the corner booth facing the window. 10 minutes later, his truck pulled in too fast and stopped at an angle across the lines. That told me more than anything he could say. He walked in with my uncle behind him. Of course he did. My father never liked having serious conversations without someone there to back him up. He slid into the booth across from me, didn't order anything, just put both hands on the table like he was ready for a meeting. My uncle stayed standing for a second, then sat at the end of the booth and folded his arms. What's this about? My father said. His voice sounded controlled, but tight. I took the folder out of my bag and set it on the table between us. That, I said, is the difference between your story and mine. He frowned but opened it anyway. The first page was the summary. Dates. Totals. Categories. He read the number once, then again slower. His eyes lifted to me like the paper itself had offended him. This isn't right, he said. Keep reading. He flipped to the next page. Company expenses. Next page. Utilities. Next page. Insurance. My uncle leaned over to look, then sat back and muttered something under his breath. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Only the sound of dishes in the kitchen and the coffee machine hissing behind the counter. My father turned another page harder than he needed to. You're inflating this, he said. No, that software wasn't for you. It was for the shop. Yes, that's not the point. It is the point, I said calmly. He flipped again. These fuel payments, 3 months, I said. After payroll bounced. He stopped talking. My uncle rubbed his forehead and leaned back in the booth. Jesus, he said quietly. My father kept turning pages until he reached the screenshots. Texts asking me to cover deposits. Messages asking me to fix invoices. Emails he forwarded with one line. Handle this. He sat there looking at them for a long time. Then he went for the argument I knew was coming. You were living in my house, he said. You didn't pay rent. I nodded once. If I had paid rent to someone else, I said, your business would have closed 2 years ago. He didn't answer. He flipped to the last page. The photo. The banner stretched across the garage. Goodbye, freeloader. His jaw tightened. You took that for leverage, he said. No, I said. I took it because I knew you'd say it wasn't that bad. My uncle looked at the picture, then at my father, then back at the table. Nobody laughed now. Nobody raised their voice. That was the part he wasn't used to. He closed the folder halfway, then opened it again like he was hoping the number would change. So what? He said finally. What do you want? Nothing. He looked up fast. You don't want money back? No, you don't want an apology? I thought about that for a second. No, I said. I wanted respect while I was still there. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a moment, then looked at me again. You can't just walk away and let everything fall apart over this, he said. I didn't leave to make it fall apart. Then why leave? I folded my hands on the table, because the only reason it was standing was me. That sat there for a few seconds. The waitress came by, poured more coffee, and left without saying anything. My father lowered his voice. How much of this can you turn back on? Not are you okay? Not we were wrong. Operations. I almost smiled. Some things can be fixed, I said. Some can't. He waited. The software can come back if you pay it. The utility stays on if the bill's current. Insurance costs more now. 2 clients already pulled jobs because nobody rewrote the emails you sent them. That hit him harder than the money. You think this is funny, he said. No, you sound like it. I sound like someone who stopped covering for you. My uncle spoke for the first time since we sat down. So what now? He asked. I reached into my bag and took out a second envelope. I set it next to the folder. Inside was a printed list. Bookkeepers. A tax service. A business attorney. Utility assistance programs. What's that? My father said. People who can help you, I said. You're not helping? No, he stared at me for a long time. If you walk away now, he said quietly, don't expect to come back when things turn around. I picked up my keys. The only reason things ever turned around, I said, was because I was there fixing them. He didn't move, didn't argue, didn't apologize. He just sat there looking at the folder like it might explain something if he stared long enough. I stood up, slid out of the booth, and walked to the door. Behind me, I heard my uncle say my name once. I didn't turn around. Outside, the air smelled like diesel and hot pavement. I got in my car, started the engine, and sat there for a second with both hands on the steering wheel. For years, I thought leaving would feel like winning. It didn't. It felt like putting something down that had been heavy for so long I forgot what it was like not to carry it. I thought that meeting at the diner would be the end of it. It wasn't. When you stop holding something together for a long time, it doesn't collapse all at once. It slips in pieces. The first message after the diner came from my grandmother 3 days later. Not a call, a voicemail. Her voice had that careful, serious tone she used when she wanted to sound like the reasonable one. Families shouldn't keep score, she said. Whatever happened, it shouldn't have gone this far. I listened to it while standing in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with the phone in my hand. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't mention the banner. She talked about the business, about how the shop was struggling, how everyone was stressed, how pride was making things worse. She said the whole family was hurting. That word again. Family. I waited until the message ended, then I set the phone down and made coffee before I called her back. Not because I wanted to argue, because I wanted one thing clear. She answered on the second ring. Lena, she said, relieved. I'm glad you called. I listened to your message, I said. Well, then you understand why we need to talk calmly. We can talk, I said, but we're not pretending nothing happened. She was quiet for a second. You father spoke harshly, she said. He was under pressure. He hung a banner over the garage. Another pause. That was unfortunate. I let that sit. She changed the subject the way she always did when something got too direct. The business may not make it, she said. If that happens, it hurts everyone. It already did, I said. She didn't answer that. Instead, she tried the line she had used my whole life. Your mother wouldn't want this division. For a second, I closed my eyes. That sentence used to work every time. This time it didn't. My mother wouldn't want her daughter laughed at in the driveway either, I said. There was a long silence. Then she said quietly, so you're not coming back to help. No, you're really going to let him lose everything. I thought about the folder on my desk. The numbers. The dates. The years. He's not losing everything because I left, I said. He's losing it because it only worked while I was there. She didn't argue after that. She just said she'd pray for me and hung up. A week later, my sister showed up at my apartment. She didn't call first. I heard the knock while I was working at the table near the window. When I opened the door, she looked smaller than I remembered. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Holding her phone like she didn't know what to do with her hands. You got a minute? She asked. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, looking around like she wasn't sure what she expected. This is nice, she said. It's enough. She sat on the couch and didn't speak for a while. I waited. She finally said it without looking at me. Things are bad at the house. I nodded once. I figured. Dad's losing jobs. Dean missed 2 installs. One of the printers got sold. She rubbed her hands together, then looked up. He keeps saying everything would be fine if you'd just help for a little while. I didn't answer. She watched my face like she was trying to guess what I was thinking. I was awful to you, she said. That surprised me enough that I looked at her. I know, I said. She nodded. The party, the hot dog, all of it. I thought it was funny because he thought it was funny. She swallowed and looked down again. When you were there, he always aimed it at you, she said. Now you're gone, it's everybody. That made sense. In our house, things stayed calm as long as one person carried most of the weight. Once that person left, the pressure had to go somewhere. She stayed that night on the couch. We didn't talk much. Just normal things. Work. Traffic. Weather. In the morning, she left early. Before she closed the door, she said, I didn't realize how much you were doing. I nodded. Most people don't. About a month later, my father emailed me. Subject line, proposal. Inside was a short message. He said the business needed help getting organized again. Said he could pay me later when things stabilized. Said this could be a chance to fix what happened. Fix what happened. I read it twice, then typed 4 sentences. I'm not coming back. I'm not doing unpaid work. Don't contact me about the business again. If you want to talk, it has to be personal, not about money. He replied almost immediately. So you're just going to watch your father lose everything? I stared at that line for a long time. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because I knew exactly how I used to answer. This time I typed slower. You're not losing everything because I left. You're losing it because it only worked when someone you didn't respect was holding it together. He never replied. A few months later, my sister texted me a photo. A moving truck in front of the house. The place went on the market. Not because he wanted to downsize. Because he had to. Public records showed it sold below asking. Clean. Simple. Just numbers on a county website. No banner. No music. No one laughing. Life settled down after that in a way I wasn't used to. Not exciting. Not dramatic. Just steady. Most mornings I wake up before my alarm, make coffee, and sit by the window in the apartment while the sun comes up over the parking lot. Colorado mornings are quieter than Arizona. Less heat. Less noise. Just the sound of a few cars starting and the wind moving through the trees near the building. For a long time, I kept expecting something to go wrong. When you spend years fixing other people's problems, calm feels temporary. Like it's only there because you haven't noticed the next emergency yet. But nothing needed fixing. No late night calls. No messages asking if I could cover something. No one standing in the kitchen telling me I should be grateful. Just work, dinner, sleep, repeat. The contract I took turned into 2 more. Then referrals. Eventually, I set up my own small consulting business so I could choose who I worked with and how. Nothing fancy. Just clear agreements, deposits up front, and written terms for everything. I learned that boundaries feel strange at first. Then they start to feel normal. About 5 months after the house sold, my father called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Something made me pick up. His voice sounded older than I remembered. Not weaker, just quieter. "I'm not calling about money," he said right away. That told me he knew exactly what I expected. "I found one of your mom's recipe cards while packing," he said. "Thought you might want it." I leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling for a second. "You can mail it," I said. There was a pause. Then he asked, more softly than I had ever heard him speak to me, "Did you really think I was that hard on you?" I didn't answer right away. There were 100 things I could have said. Arguments. Numbers. Details. Instead, I said the only thing that mattered. "You hung it over the garage." He didn't respond. Just exhaled slowly. The recipe card came 4 days later. Chicken pot pie in my mother's handwriting. At the bottom, she had written a note in blue ink. "Add extra time if Richard complains." I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny, because it felt like something from before everything got complicated. I put the card in a frame and set it on the shelf above my desk. People ask sometimes if I regret not going back to help one more time. It sounds like a kind question. It isn't. It assumes the most responsible person is always the one who sacrifices again. I don't believe that anymore. If someone only calls you family when they need your money, your time, or your silence, they're not protecting the relationship. They're protecting the system that works for them. Leaving that system isn't revenge. It's just the moment you realize you don't have to hold it up anymore. These days, my sister and I talk once in a while. Not like we used to. More careful. More honest. She moved to another state, got a steady job, and stopped trying to impress people who never notice. My father and I don't talk much. Sometimes a text on holidays. Sometimes nothing for months. That's okay. Not every relationship needs to go back to what it was. Sometimes it just needs to stop being what it was. Last week, a client told me a story that sounded familiar. He said his brother kept calling him lazy while quietly using his credit to keep the family business running. He laughed when he told it, like it was normal. I didn't laugh. I just told him to keep records. People don't like paperwork when everything feels fine. They only start looking for it when things fall apart. If you stayed with me through this story, I appreciate that. Stories like this aren't really about getting even. They're about learning the difference between helping someone and disappearing for them. If you want to hear more stories like this, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find these stories, and it keeps this community growing. I'm always curious where people are listening from, so leave a comment with your city and what time it is there right now. 2 more stories will be on the screen next, and one of them starts with a family argument that didn't seem important at the time, until the paperwork showed something nobody expected.